Goblins are the backbone of low-level adventuring. Sure, you've got kobolds and cultists, but when it comes to starting a campaign and dropping some difficult but overcomable challenges, goblins seem to do the heavy lifting. These little green or, hey, sometimes gray or yellow, and personally, I like a non-green goblin myself. These little guys have infested tabletop RPGs since these games were first being played in the basements of Wisconsin nerds decades ago. They've also been a constant in tabletop wargaming since its inception. They're sneaky, scrappy, can be spewed out in hordes, but can also become individual characters that a gaming group will never forget. Raise your hands if you have fond memories of a quirky goblin NPC that you met and ended up befriending. I think the main reason that goblins are so great for introductionary fantasy games is that everyone has a point of reference to them. They've become pretty solidly ingrained as a cultural reference point, even for people that aren't into the genres that usually include them. Goblins have been a part of human folklore for centuries, and the classic D&D style goblin has now been around for almost 90 years, since they were first described in this style in Tolkien's The Hobbit. Everybody knows what a goblin is. And I guess that's why when Dungeons & Dragons came around in the 1970s, writers said, hey, what if these little guys were standard enemies in all campaigns? Eventually leading to the humble goblin becoming the first hostile sentient creature most adventurers ever encounter. Hey, so this goblin miniature that you see me working on is one that I actually sell on my website. My website that I made with Squarespace. I've actually created and run 3 separate websites, all with web stores using Squarespace. I've got blackmagicraft.ca, idolsoftorment.com, and a third one that I'm working on right now that I'm going to be launching soon. There's a lot of reasons that I choose to build my websites using Squarespace. Mainly it's because it's easy to use. I can just pick a template to start with and quickly adjust it to meet my needs. Everything's drag and drop, which I love, and you can even use their built-in AI tools to design your website if you're not sure what to do yourself. For me though, it's the crazy simple online store integration that they offer that has me hooked. If you sell products or services online, you can get a store set up and running in an absurdly short amount of time. You can process orders and payments using their Squarespace payments, make invoices for clients, whatever you need. Use the URL squarespace.com/blackmagiccraft to start a free trial. Then once you're convinced and ready to launch, use the code blackmagiccraft to save 10% on your first purchase of a website or domain. All right, back to talking about goblins. But they're not just sword fodder. They have a distinct culture and are full of character, which is why they have stayed in this position as a standard adventure trope for decades of tabletop gaming. Tabletop RPGs have evolved over the years, and goblins became chaotic little monsters with a love of fire, weird songs, and a hatred of books because, well, written words steal your soul, obviously. They also evolved into a playable race in many games and game supplements, elevating them from nameless foe to heroic main character. It's a rite of passage for players to do a one-shot adventure where everyone is a goblin. Goblins are no longer just foes. They are a role-playing goldmine. Some game masters will portray them as tragic, downtrodden survivors in a harsh world, while others might make them comedic little agents of chaos who hoard shiny things. Some game masters will even have their players explore the depths of goblin society. Unlike orcs that are often depicted as having a brutal warrior culture, or elves that get portrayed as graceful, wise inhabitors of utopian societies. Goblins are just pure adaptability incarnate. They build their homes and towns where no one else wants to live. Gross, damp cave systems, ruined castles, and even sewer systems. They scavenge, they steal, and they innovate in ridiculous ways that most rational people could never do. And here we have the Knife Goblin. Nobody knows where he came from, and nobody wants to ask. He's small, mischievous, and dual wields a pair of rusty kitchen knives. He was seemingly born to stab. Some might even call him the Winnipeg Goblin. Some adventurers speculate that he was abandoned by his tribe for being too unpredictable, even by the wild standards of goblin kind. Others believe that he was an orphan raised by a rogue that trained him in the deadly art of kitchen knife-based combat. In reality, he's probably just a goblin that was one day cutting up some fish heads and looked at the knives and thought, "Why one knife when two knives is more better?" Knife Goblin is the kind of creature that makes an excellent reoccurring nuisance in a D&D campaign. He's too weak to fight the party head on, but too stubborn to ever stop getting in their way for whatever incomprehensible goblin reason he's come up with. Maybe he doesn't really mean any malice or harm towards a party, but he knows that they're carriers of excellent found trinkets and wealth that he can snatch in the middle of the night while they take their long rest. Or maybe he just wants to steal some food. It all depends on how sympathetic a game master wants him to be. Maybe he's the self-proclaimed goblin king of a tiny, pathetic gang of weaker goblins. A clever game master could use Knife Goblin as comic relief, a minor villain, but also as an unlikely ally. Maybe he gets captured and in exchange for his freedom offers the party dubious forms of help, leading them straight into a goblin ambush while swearing he had no idea that would happen. Maybe he's obsessed with challenging the party's rogue to a series of increasingly ridiculous knife duels, thinking that he himself is the greatest kitchen knife fighter in all the land. However he's used, whatever story that he helps tell, he's not even there to win. He's just around to be a consistently annoying pain in the adventurer's collective ass the whole time. Personally, as much as I love a horde of nameless goblins, I much prefer one iconic and memorable goblin character. This is not only a more fun form of narrative perspective, but from the side of a game master using miniatures, it also means only needing one cool goblin mini and not a whole bunch of them. The beauty of goblins in tabletop RPGs is that they can be anything. Knife Goblin is just one example, but every game has room for its own uniquely bizarre goblin character. Whether it's a pyromaniac goblin with a stolen wizard staff, a goblin chef determined to cook the best adventurer-based stew, or a goblin bard whose only instrument is a bucket and a stick. They're a perfect canvas for creative storytelling. Goblins just might be the most versatile creatures in fantasy role-playing. They can be silly, sinister, pathetic, or powerful. Simple minions or complex characters. I guess you could say goblins are just like humans. So no matter how many years pass and no matter how many editions of an RPG might come and go, goblins are always going to be part of the adventure. And if you want to grab one of these Knife Goblin miniatures, they're available on blackmagicraft.ca along with a bunch of other cool stuff. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Cheers.